Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills offense has been quite the topic of discussion, not just among Bills Mafia, but within the national media as well. So I'm bringing in an outside opinion to break it all down with me today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Well, folks, very excited to have Benjamin Solak of The Ringer with me today to talk about Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills and provide some opinion outside of the Bills circles, right? Someone who doesn't have an emotional investment in what's going on, and for him to provide some analysis, giving his opinions on Josh Allen, this Bills offense, and the path forward. So I'm very excited about that, and want to give you a little programming note because this is a little bit of an off-schedule episode, and it kind of works out because the Bills play on Monday Night Football. So I want to make sure you know what to expect this week and before the Bills kick off on Monday night. So this will be kind of a one-off episode. Then I'll give you my primer. So the primer will drop on Friday for Bills Broncos, the whole breakdown, everything you need to know about the Broncos and the keys for the Bills to win the game. And then on Sunday, I'm going to drop our episode that's going to work as our Monday episode. That's typically what we do as our final thoughts before the game. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills about the injuries. And of course, I'll offer my 5 predictions for Monday Night Football. Still plenty to get to before Bills and Broncos, but I thought it was a good time to bring in an outside opinion. Ben recently did a great video on Josh Allen and the Bills offense that there's a link in today's show notes for you to check out. And so we're going to have a conversation and bring in some outside opinion here today on the podcast. But before we get there, I got to tell you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the funnest, most exciting, easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. I love the format. It's awesome. It's just you against the numbers. It's not you against thousands of other players, including pros and including sharks. Here's what you do. You select 2 or more players. You pick more or less on their projected stats, and you place your entry. That's it. It does not take long. You can make an entry in under a minute, and then when you win, the withdrawals are super, super quick. I love watching all these sports right now. Love them even more when I have a PrizePicks entry going into a slate of games. It just makes it that much more exciting. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Folks, we spent a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits, and I'm thankful for the connection that we have. And today I want our chat to be a little more personal. So whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you are covered, my friend, thanks to our partners at Jase Medical. Life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply, even ED generics for Cialis, Viagra, and Revatio prescriptions. So go online right now at jasemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. And remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount. So if you or someone you love would like to get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily medication, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. I'm joined now by Benjamin Solak of The Ringer, one of my favorite people in the football media industry, somebody I consider a true friend, somebody I'm always rooting for. And Ben recently did an episode of The Play Sheet, and there's going to be a link to that in the show notes today called What's Going On with Josh Allen and the Bills, and that's what we're going to talk about. And he was kind enough to give us some of his time today to discuss it. Ben, my friend, welcome.
I got to do more Bills content so we can hang out more, Joe. It's been a hot second. Glad to be back on the mic with you. Yeah, Bills are having a fun year. Lot going on.
We're glad you think it's fun, Benjamin, because in Bills Mafia world, it's a little dicey. It's a little dicey, and so I'm excited to get an outside opinion here. There's no emotional investment from you on this topic, and so you can just give us straight facts. And you did a great video, and I want to kind of point people to that video, but also expand on some of that here in our conversation today. And one of the most fascinating things that you brought up in that video was something right off the bat. You talked about relative measures, and I don't want to say it for you, but can you talk about relative measures as far as Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills, Brian Daboll, Ken Dorsey? There's a disconnect, and I think relative measures is a really good way to kind of sum it up.
So I think like a general rule of just like football fandom, general sports fandom, like independent of even getting into Buffalo, is it's very tough to root for a team that's close and not quite year over year and feel like changes don't need to be made. I'm a Sixers fan. All the Sixers do is produce great in the regular season, go to the playoffs, and lose in the second round. They do it for 4 years. Then you got to fire somebody. You got to change somebody. You got to move someone over here. You have to. It is an impatient thing to be a sports fan, and ownership is more impatient than ever. You got to be faster. You got to be quicker. So I went to Buffalo this year for training camps, literally just to walk around and be like, everybody good? Like, are we all right up here? Because you guys are clearly great. Sean McDermott's clearly a great coach. Josh Allen's clearly a great quarterback, but there's no AFC Championship game, right? They went to one, but there's no AFC Championship win, right? There's no Super Bowl win. There's no season that really makes you think you're close. And that's such a frustrating thing about running a team in fandom is you can be a great, perfect team, and then a couple bounces don't go your way. You lose in the divisional round, and you're sitting there frustrated with your hands empty. And so Buffalo was kind of already teetering on that precipice a little bit coming into the season. And then you have this year that they've had where they're 5-4, and offensively, when you look at every like metric that the nerds use and the analysts use to kind of describe how well a team's performing, Buffalo's got one of the best offenses in the league. When you compare the two Ken Dorsey season and a half, that relative to like the last two Brian Daboll seasons when Josh Allen was really getting good, they're a better team by success rate, by EPA per drop back, specifically like overall EPA per play, because they're running the ball better. They're better by yards per play. They're worse by points per game. They're worse by points per drive, but that's because they're turning the ball over more. Like that feels like it's like a little bit like the randomness stuff. We can talk about their red zone issues last year. Like there's some reasons for all that, but in general, this looks like a really good offense. The problem is 2-3 years ago when it was Daboll, it was new and it was exciting and we did it. We got Josh Allen. We fixed him. He's good. Daboll's the man. Our guy's the guy. We're going to be great. And 3 years later, the same caliber of offensive performance, maybe even like slightly better, marginally better offensive performance, that's still unacceptable, right? Like that feels worse now, even though like numbers wise, it's the same because it's okay. We lost Daboll and the offense hasn't taken a new leap under Ken Dorsey, and we haven't gotten over the Bengals hump. We haven't gotten over the Chiefs hump. It feels like something is missing. It feels like it's a deficient offense. And so when we look at it objectively, like, all right, just numbers on a spreadsheet, great offense. When you go internally and you look at it, you feel it in your chest as a Bills fan who watches every single week, it feels like it's not good enough. So there's that disconnect there that I think is why you see a lot of like blame go on Ken Dorsey that probably just belongs on like the general randomness of the universe. But that's not a fulfilling thing. That doesn't feel good. And so you don't blame the randomness in the universe. You blame Ken Dorsey.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment because I think Bills fans, in terms of what their eyeballs are telling them and the way that they feel about the offense, right? There was this moment when Josh Allen was a quarterback, 2-3 years ago, where you just knew that he was going to get the ball and he was going to score and he was going to rip through a defense and it was going to be exciting and you were going to be super happy. Now they're just kind of hoping that mistakes aren't made, right? And that they can show a glimpse of that. So like you got into the disconnect a little bit, but is it just the randomness? Like what is it that's influencing these feelings?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like it's always important for me to like I'm here in my office and I poke in the numbers and I'm like, the offenses are the same. I'm right, and that because of the numbers say so. When in reality, like the fans and the analysts who watch the game every single week are going to have a better thumb on the pulse of like, okay, things feel qualitatively different, even if like overall, like this offense is still performing. And that's absolutely the case because like this year, for example, Josh Allen's got one of his highest single season completion rate in the last 4 years. He's also got his lowest ADOT in the last 4 years. Like qualitatively, obviously, the offense is throwing the ball less far down the field and prioritizing more completions. Like that's very clearly happening. Does that make the offense worse? I'm not sure it does. Like I think that you see a lot of the offenses that were pushing the ball down the field really aggressively with elite quarterbacks 3 years ago are inherently, as the years go on, throwing the ball less far down the field and prioritizing more easy completions. You're seeing Mahomes and the Chiefs do that. You're seeing Lamar and the Ravens do that. I think that's a product of defensive changes and how they've played. The stuff that was easy to get 3 years ago isn't as easy to get anymore. Like defenses have adjusted as best they can to these elite quarterbacks. And so there's very clearly been a change. I'm not sure the change itself is like bad. It's more so like this change is happening. And now describing a quality to it, like good, bad, kind of requires a lot of context. Obviously, the Bills are less prone to, exposed to, the Bills less often get those Josh Allen drives where it's just like, okay, 19-yard completion, 33-yard completion, 38-yard touchdown, F you. Like they used to have that, and they don't anymore. Yeah. But I would say a lot of teams don't have that anymore that previously had that with elite quarterbacks, right? And so that's something that I think goes away, but it's not too bad that it goes away. This was all like the intention of this was also, foretold in the James Cook pick and the Dalton Kincaid pick. You don't go and get like a back with receiving ability, nor do you go get a Travis Kelce type receiving tight end unless you envision throwing the ball more shallow more often, right? And they went and they got Trent Sherfield, and they went and they got Deonte Harty, and they wanted to work on the field stretching role, but those were minor investments relative to the more major investments of Cook and Kincaid. Like I think that they knew this offense was going to change that way. So if you want to like go back to spread them and shred them, Josh Allen yucking the ball down the field, I don't blame you, but that's what a lot of the back half of 2022 was. Like Allen's air yards per attempt over like a rolling 10-game average were never higher than they were at the end of 2022. Yep. Where after that elbow injury, he was just launching that sucker. And I don't think Bills fans like that either. So this is just kind of the reality now that you have to land in where, okay, offense was so awesome and so free 2020 and 2021, but defenses are catching up a little bit. And just as is for the Allen and Mahomes and Lamar, some of these elite quarterbacks have to start playing a little bit more within themselves, a little bit more within the structure of the offense, because defenses are doing a better job taking away the big fun stuff down the field.
Listen, outside of the 15-minute video that you did yesterday, you and I haven't had a conversation. You haven't really heard from me on my opinions on this, but you got into something that I talked a lot about this week on Locked On Bills, and that I think to understand why the offense looks the way that it does right now, you do have to take that look back to last year. And you mentioned that 10-game stretch after the elbow injury where Josh Allen was 19% throwing it over 20 yards down the field. His average depth of target was like over 11 yards. And the narratives then were, Josh Allen is big play hunting. There needs to be more efficiency from this offense. Well, my interpretation, and I'm anxious to hear from you on this, is, well, they examined that over the offseason and said, you know what we need to do? We need to build a more efficient offense. And so you bring in a Kincaid and you lean into James Cook as your number one running back. And you certainly have been trying to get these pass catching backs, whether it's been Nyheim Hines or the J.D. McKissick thing. Like this has been a priority for you. And so they build this offense to be more efficient, and Josh Allen's leading the league in completion percentage, and everybody loves that, but it doesn't feel like the Bills' offense. And so it feels like the right correction. And you talked about like Josh Allen needing to be willing to function more within it. I think that's kind of at the root of a lot of the frustrations. And I know that you want to get into calibration and risk reward. We're going to get there, but I find myself equally as frustrated in Josh Allen's appetite for doing the smart, correct thing on plays. And the turndowns are what frustrate me just as much as the turnovers.
Yeah, I think that Allen has gotten good and like a lot better certainly than I ever expected he would have coming out of Wyoming. Like I think all of us were like, this cat's never gonna sit back there and process and take an underneath route and whatever. I think he's got good at like playing quick game and structure. Like they'll like mirror concept, pick a side, one step, get the ball out to the right read. Like it's relatively big boy stuff. Like it's like, hey, we're just going to ask our quarterback to be right on the field more often than the defense is. And Allen will do that, and he'll beat him with his head as much as he beats him with arm talent and velocity and getting the ball into tight windows. Like he'll do a lot of that. It's when he gets a vertical stretch stuff, when he gets layered stuff, right? Where it's like, I have an intermediate option, but I also have a deep option. Yeah. That's where I think that they could probably get a little bit more in their intermediate game. And that's what you ask of him in terms of the in structure stuff. The other thing I would say with an intentional, like neutering of the offense and shallow of the offense, out of just like, making it a little bit more moderate, taking away some of that intentional deep stuff, is that if you're going to do that, you want your guys to be really good after the catch. You want to be distributing the ball underneath. Okay, but where are we getting our explosives now? We have to get them with run after the catch. And that's something that I don't think the Bills have built for as successfully as some of the other teams who have endured this change, right? Like, obviously, you can talk about like the Dolphins and the Niners and teams that like exclusively build everything with yards after the catch. But even look at like the Eagles. Like, the Eagles went and got their pass catching weapons: Devontae Smith, AJ Brown. Let's use you guys down the field. Dallas Goedert, we've had him for forever. Such a good blocker. He's a good tight end. But all these guys are really valuable after the catch. And so it lets the Eagles be, as the Bills want to be, like a pretty heavy RPO-y and like run some simple stuff, like half read, just make a linebacker wrong and throw it. But when that ball lands in AJ Brown's chest versus Stefon Diggs' chest, like, we can talk about measuring those two receivers against each other. Brown's definitely the better yak threat. Like, that's just something that Brown's done over the course of his career really well. Even if you look at like the Chiefs' failures, like the receivers that they've added that haven't worked, but like going to get Sky Moore, going to get Kadarius Toney, going to get Richie James, what were they trying to do? Trying to get yak guys. Or you're trying to get guys who are really good creating with the ball in their hands. The Ravens with Zay Flowers, like, these guys are you throw them a little bubble screen, you throw them a little curl route, they can make a guy miss and go. And you saw that Stefon Diggs catch run against the Bengals, and it was kind of like, oh shoot, like yeah, like that. We get more of that in this offense. You don't realize it's in other offenses and not so much in the Bills offense, so you see it there, but they don't get a lot of that from like the Gabe Davis. I think that they wanted to get some of that at Deonte Harty early in the season. You saw a lot of like throws underneath for him, and I'm not necessarily sure he's paid them off there. Kincaid is a guy who can bring that for you, and he's obviously been blossoming over the last month, so that's nice to see. But I think that the some of the change to that shallower offense, we talk about the non-Allen issues. Some of it is that they just don't have the same yards after the catch threats that these other offenses who are making this change actually do.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about yards after catch on this podcast, but I think something you said there that was enlightening to me is that it's even more critical when you consider that you're getting too high shells all the time. They're taking away explosives down the field. Can you create them with yards after catch? And I think that is a missing element to this Bills offense. And I think some of that is their personnel, and some of that is Josh Allen and his appetite for taking some of those routes that lend themselves to yards after catch and doing so with enough timing to give the receiver a chance to make those plays. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This time of year can be challenging for some people, and it's natural to feel some sadness or anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all of the stress and change, something to look forward to make you feel grounded and to give you the tools necessary to manage everything going on. Folks, it's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can even switch at any time for no additional charge. So find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Now, one of the most important questions I wanted to ask you today is, have the Bills neutered Josh Allen? Because this is a complaint of Bills Mafia. And I think you've kind of said yes to it to an extent, but it almost feels necessary. I'd love for you to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think that it's like last year when Allen was just chucking the ball down the field the whole time, right? I went and I looked at like the route maps for the Bills over the last 3 years, which is not where Allen's throwing it, but it's where the receivers are running relative to the rest of the league. And 2020, 2021, 2022 all looked exactly the same, right? It was just like they are running guys to the same plates. They're running generally the same routes. They're a little less posts, a little more goes, like whatever, like relative to the rest of the league. So I was like, okay, like I think Allen's just choosing to throw the ball much further down the field. He's getting the same routes. It's not like they're giving him more downfield routes. In 2023, I think they're definitely giving him fewer downfield routes. I think you're just seeing, like, in terms of how many miles Gabe Davis is running in a game, I think he's just running less, right? Like he's just working downfield less often. You've seen them take away some of the posts and some of the ends, go more to like corners and stuff, outbreaking routes that go into the sideline. So inherently, they're just not going to run as far down the field. I think that you've seen them take away some of his deep routes. That's intentional. That's intentional neutering, right? Like they're shallowing the offense. Now, are they neutering Josh explicitly? I don't think it's like, okay, well, we need Josh to stop doing this, so we're going to do this for Josh to stop Josh. I think it's like, we want to do this overall as an offense. Like, we think this is better for everybody, right? I think that's probably how they would frame it. I get it. I understand why they're doing it. I think it's probably the mature and right decision given how defenses are playing you and where the league is going. Josh Allen could throw the ball really far, and a 60-yard and like when you score a 60-yard touchdown, it solves your turnover problem because now you're not having drives of 12, 13 plays. You're having drives of 4 plays, right? The Bills right now are one of the lowest teams in the league in terms of drives per game because the defense can't get off the field,
right,
but also because they have to move more methodically on offense right now. So not getting quick drives, explosive drives, scoring drives. I said at the end of the play sheet video that I did that the Bills feel a little bit like they might get to a point where they just kind of like unleash Josh and just let him solve problems for them a little bit. Like I could see them just being like, all right, screw this. Like we're just going back to like Josh, chuck the thing down the field. If we go 3 and out, we go 3 and out. If we score in 4 plays, we score in 4 plays. I can see them just being like, all right, we tried this. It's 9 weeks. We don't like the way it feels. We're having issues. There's some frustration. Like let's just go back to like big caveman arm ball and see if we can just like catch a hot streak. And again, like I would get it. So it's a challenging thing. I want to come down on one side and be like, this is the right way. But this is the challenge of having like an elite quarterback and then also having a model of offense right now, what's most popular in the league, that doesn't really maximize that elite quarterback because you're in a place of conflict. You don't really know what the best move is going forward. So I don't have a clean answer. They're definitely neutering Josh to a degree, but I'm not sure that's the wrong decision. But I'm also not sure they're going to keep going down that path because they might just say, you know what, U-turn, we're going back to the old stuff.
A big premise of your video was calibration, risk reward. And so I'd love to hear you expand on that. And I wanted to get to it sooner, but you kind of, some of the things that you said were prompting me in other directions, but I know that this is kind of your big thing is calibration. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So quarterback decision-making is very funny, right? I think like, I've charted draft eligible quarterbacks for the last like 5 years, right? I've been like doing this for a while. And I think the number one thing that I've learned is like, people like to talk about like first read, second read, third read. Progressions are rarely that clean. It's rarely like, I look at the post. The post is not open. I look at the over. The over is not open. I go to the check down. I throw it. We could teach a lot of kids to do it if it were that neat. It's never that neat. A lot of quarterback progression is just risk management. It's just, what do you want to attempt? What are you willing to risk? What are you willing to gain? The throws further downfield are harder to complete, but they're better when they do. The throws shallower are easier to complete, but they're not as valuable. Like this is all just risk and reward. And so when we talk about quarterback play style, a lot of, when we talk about like the Derek Carrs of the world, right? Pull a different example. Like everybody who watches football knows, like, okay, Derek Carr's like talented, but like he's not a top quarterback. Why isn't he a top quarterback? Because Derek Carr doesn't like risk. Derek Carr just checks down, like Derek at 3rd and 9, he throws like 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. Like he just is unwilling to take on risk. You have to risk throwing picks. You have to risk taking sacks to be a good quarterback in this league. You have to hold on to the ball and throw the ball into tight windows, and that's the reality of things. So when we talk about risk and reward with Josh Allen, we see a quarterback who desperately wants to throw the ball down the field on one-on-ones. Always has, always will. Gabe Davis against a corner, we're shooting, baby. Let's live. You saw like the interception he threw against the Bengals in this game. Like that's it's a simple read. It's the quote unquote right read. Like you're getting cover 2, throw it to the honey hole, but the corner sinks under that route the whole way because the corner knows Josh wants to throw this ball. Yeah. He doesn't want to take the underneath route. So if I just give him a hint of a window, he's going to chuck this thing. I can sink right back under it. I know what Josh wants to do. So Josh will take the riskier throw, the vertical throw, the downfield throw every time, not every time, most of the time that he gets the opportunity to do so. In some instances where it's like, hey, I've got, some 3 receiver concept to this side and then I have a 1-on-1 backside. That's like very, very defensible. It's totally okay to be like, man coverage. I know I have man coverage. I like my receiver's ability to win, especially when it's Diggs. Like, let me go put the ball out there. It's high risk, high reward, but it's a very defensible choice. Then there are concepts where you have like a big clear out route that's intending to pull safeties and manipulate room and make space for intermediate routes in which the clear out is defensible, but less so because there was a moderate risk option that was like still pretty high reward. The big throw to Deonte Harty against the Bengals. It's Deonte Harty on a 1-on-1. Like, you love the 1-on-1, you love the leverage. It's Deonte Harty. You have Gabe Davis open on a crosser. Like, you got to know where your bread's buttered in terms of your receiving talent here. Like, Harty's a fun idea, but he has not been paying you off enough to be giving him this benefit of the doubt. A lot of the issues we saw with Allen 2022, right, where he was pushing the ball down the field, was a lot of this, where they're running, like I said, they ran a lot more posts and ins and a lot of in-breaking routes last year. They've kind of moved away from those a little bit. And I think that's in part because Allen would turn those down in favor of just taking the huge clear out route. just, all right, Stefon Diggs splitting a double team. Here we go. And just trusting him to solve that problem for you. That process, like it's a high risk, high reward throw. And then like a low risk, medium reward throw that if we're going to grow up and mature as a quarterback, we have to start taking that low risk, medium reward throw more often. And the example for this is Mahomes. It's if there's one thing that has separated the two quarterbacks over the last couple of years, because I mean, dude, like we were at a point in 2021 where we were like, these two guys are just going to be Rams button heads for the next decade. It's going to be Mahomes and Allen defining this generation. Since then, as Mahomes has like really clearly separated himself as quarterback one, the defining factor has been risk reward management. It's been calibration. It's been choosing to say, hey, I'm going to take some of these lower risk throws that are also lower reward because I know it's going to keep my offense on track and it's not going to expose me to 2nd and 10s and potential interceptions and so on and so forth. So that if there's an area in which Allen has to improve, it's absolutely that.
What are your impressions of Dorsey's offense? The architecture, the play calling of it, because Dorsey is not a popular figure in Buffalo right now. And there's this romanticization, if that's the correct usage of the word, that he can't scheme guys open. You buy into that? I watch the tape. I see easy button throws all the time. To me, it's more a product of Josh not taking them. But like, do you watch Ken Dorsey scheme and feel like, you know what, there's not enough answers built in, and structurally this is disjointed and not good enough to maximize what Josh Allen is?
Not at all. No, it's got the goods. Dorsey's not revolutionizing the game the way Mike McDaniel is, but he's good at what he does. He coaches a good offense. I think it's easy to forget that there were stretches of Bills offense under Daboll where we were like, can we get Josh Allen a check down? Can we leave a guy in to block? Oh, 5-man protection every time. Yeah. And Allen's under pressure and there's no hot reads. Buddy, we were doing that in 2021 and we're still doing that in 2023. It ain't because of the coordinator. All right. This is when you got the Bronco back there playing quarterback, you got to let him buck a little bit. Josh Allen, you give Josh Allen Kyle Shanahan, he's going to have the same issue where he's not throwing hot reads and they're going down the field. Like this is the nature of the quarterback, which is very fine. That's like play style. It's not like, oh, it's a huge problem. Like obviously it'd be nice if it was better, but all quarterbacks have this. Like Mahomes takes like 19-yard dropbacks. Like every quarterback has stuff that they do that kind of affects their team and especially affects their protection, especially these like scrambling guys. And so some of the issues they talk about with Dorsey in terms of like protection, hot reads, that was there during the Daboll era. Reliance on RPOs, that was there during the Daboll era. His RPO game is better than Daboll's was. That's why their running game is better, in my opinion. It's more varied. They have a more successful offensive line. Like I think the investment there has been good. If you have a complaint this year, it's that they've taken away the deep patterns and that you should live on the deep patterns with Josh, which, like I said, is an understandable argument. I get that. But it's just worth a strong reminder. We saw that in the back half of 2022. Like that's what this looked like in the back half of 2022, and there were problems with that as well. Dorsey is a little bit deficient relative to Daboll in like some of the one-off stuff, some of the short yardage stuff, some of the red zone stuff. I definitely think Daboll was better for like 1 or 2 whirlybird plays a game where it's like out of nowhere, it's like a Josh Allen QB power, and you're like, that's sick. Like they didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming. You got it into a good front. You convert on a critical 4th and 3. Like I think Daboll was better in a lot of those like one-off situations. And you've even seen that with the Giants where when they were good last year and bad this year, they still have like a couple plays a game where you're like, wow, that was cool. Like, I didn't know you guys had that in your bag and you deployed at the right time. Dorsey tends to be a little bit more by the straight and narrow where it's like, all right, 3rd and 3, let's go to our 3rd and 3 section of the playbook and let's find one that we like. So I think that there's some one-off stuff that helped the Bills like sustain an extra drive here or there, turn 3 points into 7 points under Daboll. And that's why I think points per drive is down a little bit. I think they were better goal line, especially 2022 relative to the Daboll seasons than under Daboll. But that's my only big thing on Ken is that like he could do some more like whirlybird zany stuff to kind of get the jump on defenses in critical moments. You don't see that as much from these Bills. You did from the Daboll Bills.
I got 2 more for you. And my next one is more about the offensive personnel. And as you've watched this football team, what do you like about what they have offensively in terms of personnel? What do you think is kind of missing that would, help, or not necessarily that there's a fatal flaw, but like what could they have, whether it's O-line, whatever you want to go to. What do you like? What don't you like about them?
No, the first thing that came to mind was right tackle. Be nice if we were getting, I think, some better play there. Where are you on Spencer Brown? I haven't talked to you about Spencer Brown a bit.
Well, his first 2 seasons were really, really tough. I mean, and he had injuries, and he was kind of an underdeveloped player coming out of Northern Iowa that was always toolsy, but he never really played offensive line until a couple of seasons at Northern Iowa, had injuries. I kind of understood it. And I think this year he's playing significantly better. I think if you look at it in totality across 3 years, it's bad. I think this year you've seen a lot of growth.
So I asked because I haven't given Spencer Brown like a close look this year. Going through the film that I was a lot in the Patriots and the Bengals film, I was like, oof. Like I Brown had issues in that game. I think that like when I see the pressure for the Bills, I often see it coming off that right side and coming off of Brown. So that's been the spot for me. That's always been a headache for the Bills. I think it remains a headache. So like right tackle, I think is a spot. Gabe Davis, man, like he's a great wide receiver 3. Like he's such a handy and useful wide receiver 3 because of the field stretching ability, because of the size, right? A lot of times when you have a field stretcher, you're giving something up on size. You aren't with Gabe. It'd be nice if he played a little bigger. But in general, you have the size advantage. And then we know this again a little bit more from the Daboll era than Dorsey eras. But he can also like bump in and block a little bit, which is a very handy thing to have as a wide receiver 3. Very useful. Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling sort of player. Wide receiver 2. I don't know. I'd like that was done a little bit more. I think that one of the really important paradigms that the last few years of football has taught us is that if you have one prime offensive star outside of your quarterback, you don't have enough. Like if we just look at like the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase Bengals, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, the Eagles, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk, 49ers, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill Chiefs. Like if you really want to do this thing, if you want to have an offense that can just take you through January and just mow down whatever's in its path, you gotta have 2. You gotta have the guy and then the guy that shows up when the guy can't. And the Bills have just, since the Diggs trade, have had Diggs and Theory, Diggs and Hope. And that was the thing about the Kincaid pick that like, I liked Kincaid as a prospect. I understood it for the Bills. A lot of it made sense. But if you're asking a rookie tight end to become that impactful of an offensive weapon, it's just such a thin eye of the needle to thread. That is a tough ask. Now, last few weeks of Kincaid, nice. I'm into it. I'm all about it. But we need even more than this to kind of, I think, like start to present that second threat that really, really scares teams. And so I think that Gabe Davis is the spot where you circle and you just say, hey, like Brandon Beane had so much faith in his ability to get a wide receiver 2 figured out, and a lot of those chips were on the Gabe Davis pot, and that was just a missed bet. I think Spencer Brown is another spot that you have some concern with. Altogether, like this is the best Bills offensive personnel we've seen in a bit. I think their offensive line moves in general have been good. I think that Cook and Kincaid have been nice moves for them. And Cook's the best back I think this offense has had, not by a huge margin, but I think he is over the last couple of years. It's just that you need that like star 2 in the offensive passing game, and they don't have that guy right now.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. And Kincaid, I think, is going to be a really meaningful weapon for this offense, and he's started to become that already. But having a true route runner, a guy with some yak ability, Oppo Diggs, would be phenomenal at receiver. Last one for you, Ben, as we hope that the Bills and Eagles play in the Super Bowl. Well, the Bills got to get there. The Eagles look like they're going to be okay. Yeah. But this Bills team, the schedule gets tougher, right? They're 5-4, and you got some really tough games down the stretch. What are the critical factors moving forward for us to get that Bills-Eagles Super Bowl in February?
Yeah. So firstly, like this is a big McDermott culture spot. Like you got to kind of keep the ship pointed in one direction, right? There's worlds in which this thing blows up. Not like Stephen A. Smith saying Stefon Diggs hates Josh Allen sort of way. Like obviously there's like a little bit of that just with you got to keep the star wide receiver happy. You always do. But there's just worlds in which the frustrations with the offense leads to Josh Allen going even more rogue and taking even more aggressive downfield shots, which then Dorsey digs his heels in and doesn't give him those looks. Like the offense really, really fractures. It's so tough to be 5-4 and go in your meeting rooms and be like, we're really good at yards per play. Like we did it. Like it just doesn't feel good, but you really have to be able to say, like, as a coaching staff and with Allen, be able to say, like, we are on the right path as an offense. If we just keep on trucking, like, we are going to break through. Like, remember the Raiders game, remember the Commanders game. We're scoring 35 points every week. Like, we got this. Like, we can do it. And so I think that number one, like the big onus right now is on McDermott to kind of keep everybody in line, try to keep marching on the same path. I think that's the right call. You need that. You need Rasul Douglas to pop off like crazy, which I love. Sewell ex-Eagle, 3rd round draft pick, West Virginia, thought he would be great, was terrible, went and was immediately good elsewhere. He has talked multiple times about how the Eagles defensive coaching staff just didn't teach him anything. I'm not salty about it, but Rasul's a fun player. He is. And he's not the ideal corner one, but I think that you can get enough good play out of him, enough interceptions out of him that you can feel better in the secondary, get Bernard back from injury, have him keep kind of making impact plays there. Like defensively, you have to be able to dig in and get a couple of stops. Like I think a lot of the Bills' issues on film this season on offense are very similar to ones they've had in seasons past, but the record was a lot better. And it's because of that one thing that Sean McDermott says that every Bills fan hates hearing now at this point, complimentary football, right? The Bills' offense was so good. And when they finally had errors, the defense was there to pick up the slack. There's not really a defense this year to pick up the slack, not as consistently. And so the margin for error becomes a lot smaller on offense. And so that's why like some of these errors are getting exposed. You can solve a lot of that. You can be better on offense. You can have these explosive games, but defensively, it'd be nice to be able to get a couple stops every so often. It'd be nice to get like a turnover out of Joe
turnover.
Burrow.
What's that?
Yeah. When you're down 2-0 in the turnover differential. And I think to do that, I think you need Rasul to hit. I think that's got to be a big win for you. I think Bernard's got to get back from the concussion, be healthy, and then obviously Vaughn play. Like that's the star, dude. Like he's got to be healthy and be able to play. We'll count those chickens exactly when they hatch, not a second before.
Chickens and Von Miller. The pun there. I'm sure the chicken farmer.
I love Vaughn. Vaughn's a big bass fisher. It's a dream of mine to get Vaughn on the lines.
Wow. That we need the pod. Ben and Vaughn in a boat bass fishing and just talking. That sign me up for that. I'll be there.
We'd have a good time.
Ben, really appreciate this, dude. Awesome to chat with you. And really appreciate you giving us some of your time here. For everyone that is consuming this content, make sure you are consuming Ben's content. You can follow him on Twitter /X at Benjamin Solak of The Ringer. Got podcasts. He's got videos. Make sure that you're keeping up with all of the outstanding content. You'll be a better football fan. You'll have a better feel for the entire pulse of the league if you're keeping up with what Ben is delivering with his content. All right, Bills Mafia, thanks you so much for being here. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I'll look forward to catching up with you again real soon.